That right tackle going.
It's a fun battle. And it's like any position battle in spring. There's like always ups and downs, and that's where like it's trying not to, for us as coaches and the players, not to get too caught up on the performance of one day. Like it's just one spring practice in the middle of April, so we're not riding and dying on that one, couple of 30 reps that the guy gets. But those are big, more just as like a unit to build our mentality, and hopefully as an offensive line, we're bigger than just one person. So it's fun to see that battle, but it's more important like how is that person just fitting in the group. And it's always like the best thing you can do as an offensive lineman is the right guard is like, oh, I want to play next to that guy. Like regardless of what the coaches say, like that's the biggest thing for offensive linemen is like people want to play next to that guy. So that's kind of what we're trying to build, as opposed to like just counting negatives and sacks and those sorts of things. And it's hard for offensive linemen, you just don't have a bunch of stats. It's hard to quantify who's playing better than someone else.
What can you tell us about Hall Smith? He's gotten a lot of snaps there at right tackle this year.
He's doing a great job. So Hall is a guy that I think has benefited a ton. I know he's benefited a ton from OJ, from Cade Beresford, where the preparation, like what he does in the offseason. Everyone in the country has the same amount of spring ball practices. So it's like he's done a really good job of not waiting to spring ball to see where he's at, is to like really like, okay, I need to get ahead of this thing. These are my issues. This is what I need to work on. He's done a really, really good job of working on those things in the offseason, and now he's playing really, really well.
Whether it's him or Kyle Young or Rick Moore, what do you need to see out of that right tackle this spring to be comfortable going into a fall camp knowing you have your guy?
Again, it's kind of like goes back to like hopefully we're not hinging on one position. Hopefully it's always the unit and goes back to the collective unit, like the fist is stronger than like one finger type of deal. So I know a lot of that's cliche, but cliches are generally pretty accurate. So we're just trying to bring the whole group. And spring ball, I love spring ball. Like there's nothing better than spring ball. Like we don't have to worry about having a bad call on third down or losing a game or anything like that. So like we're just working on our fundamentals and our techniques. So spring ball is awesome, especially as offensive linemen, because we're just hitting the sled every single day and just seeing how better we can get at hitting the sled and doing those simple things that just aren't necessarily like people don't see and aren't super like sexy and attractive, but like that's what matters. Like that's what we're doing, is kind of building that foundation right now. So whoever that guy is, like he's got to just elevate the group as a whole.
I know Mason, he was getting back. He was in yellow today, like getting back out there. But with him and Roger being out, who have you seen take advantage of those other reps at those spots?
Yeah, Tyler's done a good job of kind of maximizing his opportunities there. We've got Nate Cardona, a bunch of reps he was snapping today at center, so he's got to have to be a versatile guy, and he's got enough just reps underneath his belt where he can play a bunch of different possessions. He can be kind of like a Swiss Army knife for us. So we have a couple guys that are always looking to like take advantage of any opportunity that presents themselves.
We've heard over the last couple of years that Cage Casey was a bit of a weight room warrior. I've heard the same thing about Kyle Cox. He's been pretty impressive there. What have you seen out of him strength-wise?
That is one of the things in the recruiting process is like really got us fired up about Kyle, is just how strong he was in the weight room, and not necessarily just like his bench press, because that doesn't necessarily translate to football. So, but just his lower body lifts, his explosiveness, and his power clean. So he was also like a really talented shot putter, discus. So he's very, very explosive. And same thing with a lot of our young guys is like figuring out, okay, I was high school strong, now how do I be college strong? And there is that transition. I think he's starting to like every day just kind of figure that out a little bit more. I think he's still just scratching the surface of like translating all that to like functional on the football strength. And that's the great thing about our strength staff, is we have like our weight board, but those guys at the end of the day, they don't care how strong they are. Like, and lots of times strength coaches, like that's their deal and they want to know the maxes and all that stuff. But like our strength staff is great, because like it's like how good of a football player is he? Like, is what we're doing going to make him a better football player on the field? And they do a great job of getting those guys ready to be better football players.
You've been here a few years now. How would you describe as an assistant coach working for Spencer Danielson and just Spencer Danielson culture?
I always say the great thing about Boise State, like this is one of the most special places in the country, like in the whole entire country. Like this place is special. This place is different, partly because it's bigger than any one individual. Like if you walk around the hallways here, I mean, there's like murals of the most winningest quarterback in college football history. But like it still goes on. When he leaves, it's not like everyone's like, oh, like it still goes on. Like this place is bigger than any one individual. So like I just take that as like it's my responsibility. How can I like add a little bit of value to this program? I think like if everyone does that, and that's where Coach Danielson does a good job, is like he's trying to add value to this place. Like he didn't go to school here. He's like me. We didn't play here. I didn't grow up in Boise. We have a bunch of coaches on staff who did here, and I always think that's a different dynamic. Having coached at my alma mater before, like that is a very, very tough, because when you lose a game, like not only do you lose a game, but you have 27 people texting you like, hey man, what's going on? Like, you guys suck. So it's awesome to see him just kind of operate and just try to add whatever value he can in like such an amazing special program.
See, when you first got here, you know, when it came to the offensive line, it's kind of a big picture question. It seemed like it needed some work, and whether that be your starting five or maybe even more so than that, some depth. And you look, you know, a few years later, and it feels like you guys really have that now up front. How would you kind of evaluate how you have built, you know, what you now have since you've arrived at Boise State?
I always think that's like a little bit of the magic in coaching the offensive line room. It's just such a big room. It's easy to focus on the 5 or 6 guys that are playing, that are starting. But the next year, those guys graduate, and it's like, okay, were we developing these other younger players? Were we recruiting good players? So that's something I always think is like the secret sauce, is like always trying to develop the young players in the room, and not just get so focused in on the starters. It's been really, really fun. I think COVID had a lot to do with that. Just kind of like, I think college football in general is kind of like on a little downward slope, just with like the limitations of practice and off-season weight rooms. So it has been really fun just to be here, like build the room, get those guys believing in something that's bigger than themselves, and hopefully like everyone sees that and sees how like those guys are coming together and love being Boise State Broncos. They don't care like whether they're getting hyped or stats, or I mean, they don't care if we win a game like 2-0 or like, that doesn't matter. Like, they just want to do really, really well to help the greater good of the team.
I don't know if you can quantify this or not, but like when you first got here, it felt like, okay, we need 5 to get out there and start, obviously. And now it just feels like you have, I mean, even last year, like 7 or 8 you could probably run out there and feel comfortable with. Like, what do you think of like the, not just competitive, showing up, being competitive, but competitive in a starting spot? How would you compare that to like maybe when you first got here?
That's always like a huge part of the development, is that there is that competition piece. If everyone kind of knows like there's the 5 starters and then there's everyone else, like you don't get that true competition. And that's something that not just me, but like the whole program, like we've tried to do that in January, create competition. Like, oh great, we got these 5 guys tugging the rope, these guys 5 guys tugging the rope, like let's see who can tug the rope harder. Like simple, easy things like that is always building that competition. Like it's dumb, like we have our guys do push-ups. Like if they miss an assignment, they're doing push-ups in the meeting room. It's just little things like that to always create competition. And then they take it over. Like now, Mason and Ben, they're in the room like, hey, go to play 7. This guy's got push-ups, he missed assignment. Like now they kind of police it, and they make it, and they take it over, and they take the ownership, and then it kind of like got a life of its own, and then it's like awesome. Like, these guys can handle it, and that allows the coaches to focus on scheme. We're not talking about like how to break the huddle and how to snap the football. It's like, no, now we can actually start developing that part of it, and they can control the things that they can control.
When you're trying to find a 5, is it an eyeball test? I mean, it just seems like sometimes a group fits together better than others. Maybe it's not the most talented, but it's a group that works together. So when you're trying to come up with 5, is it a feel?
Totally, especially in practice, because like right now we're charting run efficiency, and it's really hard because we don't want to tackle all the time. We can't tackle all the time. So we have a defender and Ashton Genty in the hole, and he tags off. We're like, all right, that's a 2-yard gain. But we all know like what Ashton Genty's going to do in the hole to a defender. So it's always trying to put some data, but then always like lots of times I try to watch the play and take my headset off and just hear how they're communicating, hear how they're talking, that's a big deal. Just that they're operating together. That's a big way for us to just get in rhythm and play fast, is our communication, the pre-snap. So some of that, like you're saying, is a little bit of a feel. But the guys will tell you too, like you just have to have real conversations. They'll tell you, like I said, like I want to play next to this guy. And when you're out on the blue in front of a sold out stadium, you don't want to play next to your buddy. Like you want to play next to the guy you think has the best opportunity to get the job done. So regardless whether you like that guy, whether he's from Texas, whether he's from California, like you're just finding the right guy that is going to get the job done. A lot of that starts with like, okay, if I'm Ben Dooley, I'm working out, but I'm not necessarily working out, like I'm watching Kyle Cox and like, is he going to skip a rep in the weight room? Because if he is, I might not trust him on the blue. So like that's where that all starts in the winter, and now is slowly kind of building to this part of it. There's a certain amount of work that's required to turn the team into a family. Like that's where we're at.
What was most impressive about what Cage did coming in last year, and then just what's kind of the ceiling for a guy like Cage?
He's got an extremely high ceiling, extremely high ceiling. Again, like we had Ezra Cleveland here. I didn't coach Ezra. I didn't recruit Ezra. I've watched a lot of film on him. They have similar movement patterns, like similar size, similar stories. So I don't want to go as far as saying like he's like Ezra, but he kind of has a lot of the similar traits as Ezra. We all know like Ezra's a great player in the NFL. So he has a very high ceiling. Like anyone that has a high ceiling is finding ways to like keep him motivated, keep him focused, keep him push himself. His standard is different than some other people's standards just because he does have that high ceiling. So it's always finding ways to like push him and motivate him and like have him realize like it's not good enough just to win your rep. You have to dominate your rep. Like, and that's where we're trying to get him to right now.
Where is he better this year?
On the field, like we've put a lot, like, and again, he's great kid because literally the week after the season, he's like, I know I have these 3 things I need to work on. How do I get these 3 things better? And it's like, all right, let's make some cut-ups. Let's create some structure for you in the offseason. And he was working on his pass sets and his strikes and all that stuff in January on Saturdays in the blue. Like he's been doing all that stuff. So right now what he's doing in practice is seeing like, okay, that was all the work I put in, what was working, what was not, and then he's going to put that same amount of work in June and July so he can be that much better in August and September.
You said you coached Ezra. I know you didn't coach Matt Paradis. Probably could play with him for that matter. But those guys have been around your practice lately. What does it mean to kind of have those guys around? And I saw like Matt particularly, like you guys were talking about, go into it or whatever. But
Yeah.
you guys spent some time together talking about some things.
Yeah. Again, Boise State's a special place. There's special people that have been here. Like, we want those guys to be around as much as possible. Like Matt Paradis, I never played center in the NFL. Like Matt Paradis has played center in a Super Bowl. Like he has got so much knowledge. Like we're just trying, like he's a sponge. We're just trying to take every little thing out of we can to help give it to our players. And those guys are great because they know that the players that are in the meeting room right now are very similar to those. They're Matt. You know what I mean? Like our guys, Mason's a lot like Matt. So how can those guys interact and how can we create an environment where those guys get together and they just share like how they were able to dominate. And again, that's what's made Boise State is the older guys help the younger guys, whether they're here, right, freshman and a senior helping each other, or whether it's a junior getting helped by a guy that's played in the NFL. They always come back and help each other, and that's like the special place. So it's my job not to get in the way. Like I don't want to get in the way. It's like, hey, you guys, here's the room. You guys hang out. You guys talk. Like let me just leave so you guys can get some good information going.